Episode 17, Guru Manifestations. The history of religions is replete with stories about prophets, mystics, yogis, and saints who have superluminal visions of the divine. These apparitions range from beholding the Virgin Mary at Fatima to seeing Krishna walking with his gopis. In this section, Yogananda again goes on at length about divine and sudden appearances of Sri Yukteswar. The following day I received a postcard from my guru. "I shall leave Calcutta Wednesday morning," he had written. "You and Dijan meet the 9 o'clock train at Serampore station." About 8:30 on Wednesday morning, a telepathic message from Sri Yukteswar flashed insistently to my mind. "I am delayed. Don't meet the 9 o'clock train." I conveyed the latest instructions to Dijan, who was already dressed for departure. "You and your intuition." My friend's voice was edged in scorn. "I prefer to trust Master's written word." I shrugged my shoulders and seated myself with quiet finality. Muttering angrily, Dijan made for the door and closed it noisily behind him. As the room was rather dark, I moved near to the window overlooking the street. The scant sunlight suddenly increased to an intense brilliancy in which the iron-barred window completely vanished. Against this dazzling background appeared the clearly materialized figure of Sri Yukteswar. Bewildered to the point of shock, I rose from my chair and knelt before him. With my customary gesture of respectful greeting at my guru's feet, I touched his shoes. These were a pair familiar to me, of orange-dyed canvas soled with rope. His ochre swami cloth brushed against me. I distinctly felt not only the texture of his robe, but also the gritty surface of the shoes and the pressure of his toes within them. Too much astounded to utter a word, I stood up and gazed at him questioningly. "I was pleased that you got my telepathic message." Master's voice was calm, entirely normal. "I have now finished my business in Calcutta and shall arrive in Serampore by the 10 o'clock train." As I still stared mutely, Sri Yukteswar went on. "This is not an apparition, but my flesh and blood form. I have been divinely commanded to give you this experience, rare to achieve on earth. Meet me at the station. You and Dijan will see me coming toward you. Dressed as I am now, I shall be preceded by a fellow passenger, a little boy carrying a silver jug." My guru placed both hands on my head with a murmured blessing. As he concluded with the words "Tabasi," I heard a peculiar rumbling sound. His body began to melt gradually within the piercing light. First his feet and legs vanished, then his torso and head, like a scroll being rolled up. To the very last I could feel his fingers resting lightly on my hair. The effulgence faded. Nothing remained before me but the barred window and a pale stream of sunlight. I remained in a half-stupor of confusion, questioning whether I had not been the victim of an hallucination. The crestfallen Dijan soon entered the room. Master was not on the 9 o'clock train, nor even the 9:30. My friend made his announcement with a slightly apologetic air. "Come, then. I know he will arrive at 10 o'clock. I took Dijan's hand and rushed him forcibly along with me, heedless of his protests. In about 10 minutes we entered the station, where the train was already puffing to a halt. "The whole train is filled with the light of Master's aura. He is there!" I exclaimed joyfully. "You dreamed so!" Dijan laughed mockingly. "Let us wait here." I told my friend details of the way in which our guru would approach us. As I finished my description, Sri Yukteswar came into view, wearing the same clothes I had seen a short time earlier. He walked slowly in the wake of a small lad bearing a silver jug. For a moment a wave of cold fear passed through me at the unprecedented strangeness of my experience. I felt the materialistic 20th century world slipping from me. Was I back in the ancient days when Jesus appeared before Peter on the sea? As Sri Yukteswar, a modern yogic Christ, reached the spot where Dijen and I were speechlessly rooted, Master smiled at my friend and remarked, "I sent you a message too, but you are unable to grasp it." Dijen was silent, but glared at me suspiciously. After we had escorted our guru to his hermitage, my friend and I proceeded toward Serampur College. Dijen halted in the street, indignation streaming from his every pore. "So, Master sent me a message, yet you concealed it. I demand an explanation." "Can I help it if your mental mirror oscillates with such restlessness that you cannot register our guru's instructions?" I retorted. The anger vanished from Dijen's face. "I see what you mean," he said ruefully, "but please explain how you could know about the child with the jug." By the time I had finished the story of Master's phenomenal appearance at the boarding house that morning, my friend and I had reached Serampur College. "The account I have just heard of our guru's powers," Dijen said, "makes me feel that any university in the world is only a kindergarten." A skeptical analysis. I have noticed a recurring structural pattern in several of Yogananda's stories when they involve a sibling or friend who is close in age to him. They are competitive apologues. Apologues where those who question or doubt his intuitions, visions, or predictions invariably get their respective comeuppance in the end. We first saw it with the elder sister, Uma, concerning a boil, then with a kite, and now it arises again with his brother disciple, Guru Bai. Dijen, who when doubting Yogananda's intuition is eventually corrected and slightly reprimanded by Sri Yukteswar. In each of these stories, and several more, Yogananda comes out the winner. Humans are fond of hierarchies, and India is an especially multi-layered culture. See Louis Dumont's Controversial Homo Hierarchicus, The Caste System and Its Implications, for more on caste in color. We are fond of status stratifications, since in the Darwinian struggle for existence it is imperative that we find any leverage, social or otherwise, over other competitive creatures scavenging about us for rare resources, be they economic or prestige-laden. Hence, it is not shocking to see Yogananda wanting to one-up his companions on occasion, particularly if they question his spiritual realizations. Once again, we confront the strange ordinariness of the miracles that abound in the day-to-day life recounted in the Autobiography. In this case, Sri Yukteswar is going to be an hour later than expected, which, given the Indian railway system, doesn't seem to be an earth-shattering problem, but this necessitates a visionary, nay bodily, intervention. Yogananda initially gets a hunch that his guru's arrival is not going to be on the 9 o'clock train, as instructed, but the later 10 o'clock one. He then apparently conveys the premonition directly to Dijen, who dismisses it angrily. This seems to ruffle Yogananda a bit, so he sits down near the window, looking out at what he refers to as the scant sunlight. All of a sudden, this very light turns into a beatific manifestation of Sri Yukteswar. Not only does his guru confirm Yogananda's intuition, "See, Dijen, you are wrong again," but he adds, "This is not an apparition, but my flesh and blood form. I have been divinely commanded to give you this experience rare to achieve on earth." What are we to make of this outrageous claim on Yogananda's part, since we don't have Yukteswar's version? Do physical bodies truly bilocate because one is arriving an hour later than expected? Or is this a dramatic rendition, where Yogananda, quite intentionally perhaps, demonstrates his spiritual superiority over Dijen? The contextual underlining of this story has an interesting psychological layer, tying it together with forces the reader not only to doubt the radiant but physical form of Sri Yukteswar, showing up through the window sills unannounced, but to wonder why being an hour late would necessitate such a divine visitation. Yogananda has lots of visions, but never seems to question whether they are projections of his own mind. To counter this obvious criticism, he customarily has his guru confirm, even if opaquely, that what Yogananda envisioned was generated by Sri Yukteswar himself. Yet if the vision of his guru is truly physical, then why, right after this event, does he confess that he remained in a half-stupor of confusion, questioning whether he had not been the victim of hallucination? Hume's maxim is educative here, where he argues in his 1748 seminal text, An Inquiry Concerning Human Knowledge, that no testimony is sufficient to establish a miracle, unless the testimony be of such a kind that its falsehood would be more miraculous than the fact which it endeavors to establish. Also helpful in this regard is Thomas Jefferson's admonition: 1,000 phenomena present themselves daily which we cannot explain, but where facts are suggested, bearing no analogy with the laws of nature as yet known to us, their verity needs proofs proportioned to their difficulty. Finally, and more simply put, we can employ Carl Sagan's rewording of Pierre-Simon Laplace's early dictum: extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. Though Yogananda's tales are enthralling, he doesn't back them up with enough evidence to make them wholly believable. I don't doubt that he is certain of what he witnessed, but that certainty doesn't easily translate over to his more quizzical-minded readers.